Hey everybody, Jonathan Broadbent here, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Welcome to another episode. Boy, we've got a strange screen set up this time. Let me see, maximize. There we go. I was doing something in a previous recording using this channel, so now we're full screen. We don't need that swirling background distracting us because we've got a lot to cover today and we don't need any distractions. I'm Jonathan Broadbent, your host of UnWoke.Academy. Welcome to another Wednesday. I don't know about you guys, but this is my favorite lunch hour of the week because I get to talk to you and I get to bring out and talk about really important stuff. So there are lots of people who are concerned about all sorts of things. The people that are awake and paying attention are concerned about everything from security and borders to election voting machines and all sorts of things. This is where we follow the money. This is where I deploy my institutional finance background, working on, for, against, next to, adjacent to, over, under, all around Wall Street for decades. So I know a lot about the world of finance, how things get funded, and things like mutual funds. So that's an easy entry point for discussion for today. Most people have at least a basic understanding of mutual funds and what they're there for, what they fund, how they work. But humor me for a second here because I'm going to point out a few things. There are some elements of mutual funds that aren't common knowledge. So they're sort of, the thing that everybody sort of dutifully checks off when you enroll in something like a 401k, or if you go in and meet with a financial planner or advisor or broker, they might give you a list and say, I'm recommending these mutual funds. Or if they're a little bit more, I don't want to say modernized, but they're a little bit more current, they might have things in addition to mutual funds or alternatives like exchange traded funds, which is kind of it's a cousin to mutual funds. It's similar. But pausing for a minute so that we're all on the same page for today's conversation, it's important to know that mutual funds are actually they're very similar to working with a stockbroker of yesteryear, except you're giving that decision-making authority to an institution. So it used to be back in the day, 30 plus years ago, or 25 or whatever, it used to be you might have a personal stockbroker who would look at your portfolio and keep an eye on a bunch of stocks. And that's an opportune moment for me to point out behind the scenes what kind of happens inside of mutual funds. But that stockbroker used to go out and presumably would do some research and follow companies and make investment decisions knowing you and knowing your family, knowing your objectives, and you would know what you owned. So, and I've seen thousands of them through my career of people that have a statement that comes from their investments. And on that statement, you'll see fill in the blank companies, all these companies that you would know, whatever, Ford and General Motors. And these are not investment recommendations, by the way, they're just examples. But on that statement, it used to be that you would see and know what you own. Well, there was a successful shift really in the 90s away from working with individual stockbrokers to giving that same decision-making authority to things like mutual funds. So we call them portfolio managers. In general, in my world, we call them PMs. That's just sort of a blanket nickname for the people that are making the investment decisions inside of things like mutual funds and exchange traded funds, etc. Some of them might balk at the use of that term, but I don't care. I use PM. They're portfolio managers. So if you go to a BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street or American Funds or T. Rowe Price, or whatever, there are lots of different ways of going through different financial professionals or money managers, PMs, that get you into all sorts of different sounding portfolios. So what does that mean in everyday real life? In real life, if you go to work for some company and you work there for a little while, usually there's a little bit of a delay in you being able to access your 401k plan. Or if you come across a lump of money and you go in and meet with a financial planner, they work up a list and make investment recommendations, you might see a list of different investments that are being recommended. Or in the case of a 401k, you see a list of different investments that are available to you. Well, they all seem to have really compelling names. And the following are meant to be hypothetical. If it sounds like, or I inadvertently land on an actual name, then it's unintentional. But they're always like the elite global ultra equity fund and whatever. And they have things, they frequently have something in the title that can seem a little confusing, like a high dividend express fund or whatever. So they use a lot of names, and I'll tell you that, and I know I can speak for probably all or the vast majority of other people who work in finance. It's been known forever that oftentimes the name can be a little misleading. It'll have something in the name that when you look at the actual investments that are being done for you, oftentimes the name is misleading, and the investments that you're being put into are counter to or have nothing to do with the name, like a high dividend. And sometimes you look at them, and some of them are high dividend, and some of them you're like, wait a minute, how are you putting that in the category of high dividend? Is it maybe, I don't know, it could be anything that leads portfolio managers to make decisions like that. But I personally don't like misleading names on funds, because let's face it, a lot of people, most everybody, busy lives. And you'd like to feel that you have somebody there in this whole network, a whole sort of a landscape of different financial professionals you might work with. Some work with a financial planner, some work with a financial advisor. Pretty much nobody says broker anymore because it became a bad word. An insurance rep or through your 401k or whatever. You'd like to feel that somebody in there isn't, in fact, lying to you or manipulating you. Well, I'm here to say that over the past couple of years, I'm going to start with the RFI that I did. An RFI is a formal business process called a request for information. In case you've missed this, I talked about it a lot during 2024. I did several episodes on it. I went out to virtually every money manager, portfolio manager I can find. All the big ones, many that you've probably never heard of, some that I just found through web searches. Everyone that I could find and get an email address for, I sent a request for information talking about their process of deciding how to invest your money. I'll get into how I define woke in a moment. But basically, or actually not basically, in pretty spelled out detail, I asked all these PMs, are you using woke metrics to decide how to invest other people's money? And after a year, I actually didn't tally the logs, but well over 200 phone calls. I talked to a lot of people. My company and my name, my background, the things that I've done have led me to a position of having contact with, and probably, I don't know if I'll call it respect. I guess respect works well. I don't know that I'm particularly liked at a lot of them, but I don't care about being liked. My job isn't to be liked by them. My job is to act as the surveyor of them and make sure that they're doing their job well. So the result of that request for information from 2024 is I had exactly 0 formal responses, but I had over 200 phone calls. And in those phone calls, I had lots of people, a lot of people saying, I think it's complete rubbish. I think it's garbage. It's fictional and it's smoke and mirrors. The whole environmental, social, and governance and sustainable, if you're just listening and not watching, I'm air quoting that, sustainable fund. The diversity, equity, and inclusion, that stuff is, as far as I'm able to determine, and as far as any formal answer from all the people managing trillions and trillions of dollars on behalf of other people, it's fictional. It's virtue signaling. You put a label on it, and suddenly you can go out there and claim extra billions of dollars because everyone feels better. So what ended up happening, as far as I'm able to puzzle together, lots of companies out there, and BlackRock gets called out a lot for doing it, but they're far from the only one. They put these labels like sustainable fund and where the diversity, equity, inclusion, or ESG, whatever. I actually, going back to 2015, found myself very involved in the whole ESG conversation and the idea of using that as a litmus test. Well, ultimately, I came to the conclusion, I had several arguments about it. And I last year, I fired a company I'd worked with for 20 years because they bought into it. They were making big money by presenting this, I have to say, false notion that ESG could be measured somehow. If you can't define it, it can't be measured. And nobody bothered to define the darn thing. So bear with me here. And oh, by the way, I am on 5 platforms currently, and feel free to add comments. If you have any questions about, or if any part of this is unclear, ask me and I'll drill down. And if you think of anything after the fact, or have questions about specific things, please don't send any personal identifiable information about you. I don't want it. I don't need it. No names or address or social security number, no account numbers, please do not include any of that in any communications with me. But if you have general questions like, hey, I've got this Manning and Napier fund. That's a PM. I've got this Manning and Napier fund. What do you think of this one? Absolutely. Send that to me at info@unwokeinvesting.com. And I may use it for a topic for a future conversation. But here's what ended up happening in that whole world of wokadoodle, outside influence peddling, the virtue signaling veneer that got put on those different portfolios. There's something called the corporate equity index. Some people out there, if you do searches, they discovered that we are awake to the misuse and the Marxist background behind the use of the word equity. It's abused, it is fraudulent, it's awful, and it's manipulative. So you'll see places listed as the corporate equality index, whatever. The bad guys try to use equality and equity interchangeably because they're horrible people, and it's not true, and they're not the same word. Whichever you want to call it, corporate equity index is a tool that was used by some very powerful international, think of it like the global banks, globalist banks, use the corporate equity index, and apparently there are some multinational non-governmental organizations. I think the United Nations may have bought in and exert some control through it. And so if you check a whole bunch of boxes on that corporate equity index, then you would get preferential treatment and get better access to shipping, supply chains, the ability to borrow money, etc. So that forced corporations to jump through a lot of hoops. Those corporations would check all these boxes for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and environmental, social, and governance. And lo and behold, the people holding the purse strings would loosen them up a little bit and give some of those companies money. The more they did, and the worse they got, to the point of damaging their own brand, they got money. And those that didn't get money. Well, I'm going to pause for a moment and highlight for you, my listening audience, what capital markets are actually there for. Let's imagine for a moment that you have a business idea. You want to go out there and grow some company. You're the next startup that you think you can become the next big thing. You're going to start in your garage. You're going to have a couple of friends helping you out, and you're going to bootstrap the thing and start off with very little money until you get to the point where you need more capital to grow. You need branding, you need website, you need whatever, a truck and shipping, and you need supplies, and you need equipment. So you're going to borrow money. This is sort of typical path. You're going to borrow money from friends, family members, some neighbors, or whatever. Maybe apply for some grant dollars if you can find those. And then at a certain point, you're going to hit another ceiling and need to go to banks. Well, it used to be common for local community banks to lend to you. If they liked your idea and thought, well, I think this has some legs to it, that bank might lend you money. Local community banks are all but extinct now. They've been dying due to federal corporate or federal government pressure has really kind of crushed them over the past couple of decades. Something north of around 800 of them closed just during the Biden era. A little over 800 closed during the Obama era. And then there was a little bit of a reprieve as Trump won, eased some of that burden on local community banks. And then it was back at it during the Biden years. So it's really difficult when you get to that point, and this is the imaginary you who's got a business concept, to find sources for that money. Well, that at a certain point, when you get far enough along and you've really got something, one path for you to generate capital, the much needed money to operate your business, is to go public. and make an offering to the public. It's called a public offering. And the public might choose to fund your business. There are some people out there that might see what you're doing and say, I like that idea. I think I'm going to put a little bit of my money toward this new thing because who knows, maybe one day it could really take off and I'll make a lot of money back again. That's capital markets. That's capitalism. It's a beautiful, brilliant thing when you get outside of the earshot of the ridiculous woke leftists who hover around education, trying to convince kids that capitalism is some horrible evil. That's what made America. It's what made the middle class. It's what provided the freedoms that we have enjoyed for so many years, decades. Yes, there are parts of it that can be corrupted, and there's crony capitalism. Yes, like anything else, you're going to find downside. But overwhelmingly, it made the millionaires and the wealth and the individual autonomy and freedom and liberties that we enjoy in the United States. That's really unlike anywhere else. So first thing you need to do is stick your fingers in your ears and la, 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 I can't hear you, to all the social communists who try to convince everybody that going the way of Venezuela is going to make everything fair and equal and equitable and blah, 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 and social justice and all their ranting and ravings. Capitalism works. Capital markets, like the stock market, when you get that influence of the corporate equity index, doesn't work. It fails. And it fails because it forces money out of the competition and into only those few companies that check all the boxes. That's this list behind me. These companies, NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon.com, Alphabet, Broadcom, Meta. There are a bunch more. There are around 30 of them. I keep calling them the 30-ish, who were so good at being global and checking a whole bunch of boxes that it became ridiculously overfunded. Those companies just sucked all the oxygen out of the room, or in this case, capital. They got so overfunded, and you've heard me comment on it before. Most recent reports I've seen, and I've published the news articles that reference it, is an average bonus to the executive leadership of many of these types of companies of $16.7 million in stock bonus. So many of these are companies that harmed themselves. They jumped through hoops. They did the horrible things to their companies that was asked of them by the managers of the corporate equity index. And then in return, they were given $16.7 million in stock bonuses. That's just broken and wrong. And what it means is a lack of competition. So for those companies that jump through all the hoops, it's a win-win. At the top, even though many of them were cutting staff, they were closing locations, they were cutting back, they were firing people, laying off, their brands were horribly damaged. And I'm thinking specifically of Target, that got hit when they went woke. It was a $13.8 billion market loss in their stock price, if I remember correctly. And a whole bunch of them. Ford has done it, General Motors, etc. If we are put in a position where those mutual funds that we would like to trust, the ones we sign up for in our 401k plan and IRA, etc., if they've all drunk the Kool-Aid and they all end up putting your money via all sorts of different sounding names into virtually the same thing over and over and over and over again, we've got a broken system. Those companies no longer have competition, and they can breathe easy knowing they can do whatever they want, because there isn't some startup pressuring them, innovating, nipping at their heels that might overtake them someday because they don't have money. Those that aren't checking the boxes, that aren't already globalist, they end up gone. They're destroyed because they can't find anywhere to get money to continue to grow. Capital markets, in other words, get ruined at that point. That's horribly wrong and horribly broken. And that is really actually where we got to. I know. I know that this is a trend that's reversing. So during the Biden administration, I firmly believe that if some woke leftist had managed to get back in the White House, whichever one of them, I think they're all pretty much puppets anyway. If they'd managed to get another 4 years, it would have continued on that trend. And pretty soon, pretty much every investment, I mean, if we headed down the path we were on, we were pretty significantly far down that path than anything you invest in. Any private portfolio or exchange traded fund or mutual fund, or you can go on from there. I know lots of other types. You can get UITs and all those kinds of things. Eventually, you get to the point where any of them you pick all has around the same 30 companies in it. So they might have a different sounding name, like the elite globalist golden, premier, whatever they want to call it. And maybe you feel like you're investing in a diverse mix of different types of investments, and you put your money in 8 or 10 different funds, and it shows up on your statement. It's no longer clear what you own, because you actually have to take a minute to do a little bit of research to figure out what that fund is investing your money in. But what if you get these statements that have all kinds of different mutual fund and exchange traded, all these different names? And what would you do if you're paying a financial advisor, planner, or whatever, and they're putting you in this broad mix of different sounding investments, and then you lift the hood and they're all identical? They're all investing your money in virtually exactly the same way in their very small number of companies. Well, that's less of a hypothetical than you might think. Go back and watch the episode that I did exposing, this is a pseudonym given to a family, but I did one on Yosemite Sam. That was a cartoon character that this person picked in order to remain anonymous. Yosemite Sam had a huge mix of all kinds of different stuff. But then some of these companies were in that portfolio 25, 27, 28 different times. Overlap. That's massive overlap with very little distinguishable difference. So wildly different sounding fund names ultimately ended up invested in the same gosh darn thing over and over and over and over again. That's how you end up with massive overfunding of these companies. And again, I've said it before, I still like saying it. Where is it? Apple, second from the top on this list that's behind me. I know in Substack you can't see the green screen effect. That is actually something I'm working on. There is an upgrade that I can get for the software that I use that runs the live streams. I think it costs something more, but I'm exploring it. I should, hopefully in the future, be able to add Substack and maybe even Telegram to the live stream. Then you'll be able to see the background. So Substack, humor me on this. You can't see it right now, but you can understand what I'm talking about. It's a list of NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, etc. And by the way, these are, once again, not investment recommendations. This points to the research that we do. But what we've ended up with is the usual players from all the usual suspects. And now I can add another level to that, another important element to the research and exposing the stuff that we do as we follow the money. So there are lots of concerns that are coming out, and I see them all over social media, and sometimes people tag me and ask my opinion. People are doing videos. We've got the institutional purchasing of land, homes, and real estate, and even farms in the United States. So though I get some people pointing to Blackstone, BlackRock, and companies like them buying up homes and land, sometimes via surrogates, but it's happening. We've got big concern right now because of the post that Donald Trump made on Truth Social a few days ago about health insurance premiums having to do with the Obamacare. We've got mega hospital systems, the big hospitals' influence on politicians, and insurance companies, the same thing. Add to that the concerns that have grown around school curriculum, the funding of big tech, or ed tech as it's called, or education technology, data mining of children, what gets published and presented to children. It's another area of concern. All of these things, all of them, without exception, at the end of the day, have some origins here on Wall Street and how they get their money, how they get funded. So I keep making the comment. Actually, we have an expression. I made it in my show notes for today. I love this expression. It's sort of formulated here internally. What we fund today becomes the future the next generation inherits. So if we want children, grandchildren, whatever, the next generation, to end up with 30-ish companies controlling everything all over the world, and you have to go through them if you want anything, we would keep going on that Biden track, and we would keep trusting and believing in woke Wall Street. I'm among those who doesn't believe that. I don't believe we should. So I don't know if you're aware of this, but on February 21st of this year, 2025, speaking of Donald Trump, he issued a statement. It was a release from the White House on February 21st that is something called an investment policy statement, an investment policy that sets the tone for how capital markets should work. We actually got to start long before that at UnWoke.Academy. We started using the research to advocate for and encourage people to explore investment alternatives that are not woke. Largely, that was encouraging people to go back to what we know works, which is suggesting building individual stock portfolios, because you can strip out the management fees, those portfolio manager fees. You can know and control your costs. And most importantly, you know what you own. You're not buying into and funding the woke stuff. So putting all that together, if you end up with some sort of financial planner, advisor, somebody who gives you this cool sounding list of different funds, and you agree to it, and the funds ultimately have massive overlap and they end up funding a whole bunch of the same darn things over and over and over again, giving you way less diversification than you think you've got. And then ultimately, if these are companies that are doing the things that you find objectionable and harmful in society, like buying homes. I was told recently that a southern state is now at 30% institutional owner for single family homes. 30% of the state has already been bought up by institutional owners. If you don't like that, don't fund it. And getting back to Apple. So when I say this is a globalist bubble, these are companies that are on the globalist good guy list. The globalists love this. Globalists, if they could get America and the world to buy and transact through 5 different companies, all 5 of which are owned by the same interwoven portfolio manager, big wealth managers out there, the big institutional money managers like BlackRock and Blackstone and Vanguard and State Street, which, by the way, are all intertwined. They all own each other. If global billionaires can control those Wall Street type firms, and those Wall Street type firms can eventually get everybody overfunding a small handful of companies, they control the world. It's as simple as that. And already, right now, I've used the analogy several times with Apple. I like it, so I just keep borrowing it. There was an economist. I did a working lunch a few months ago who made the comment about Apple. He said during this presentation, if you believe in the current price of Apple, then you believe that we will all be wearing Apple devices, living in Apple homes, driving Apple vehicles, and streaming Apple services. That's how overvalued Apple is. And Apple isn't anywhere near NVIDIA. NVIDIA, as a single company, now surpasses many entire nations' stock market in their valuation. That's just wrong. What if, and you have to ask this question, even if a little tiny part of you is capitalist, what if there's another company out there that could do it better? What if they could do it more efficiently? What if right now they're crushed under the boot heel of captured capital markets? That's where we've been for a long time. So we're seeing the reversal. If you've followed UnWoke.Academy, you know that as an offshoot, we started the Financial Private Membership Association. That's an option for people. More importantly, it is an encouragement to the financial world to copy everything I'm doing. If you're a financial advisor out there, a financial planner or insurance broker or bank rep, I don't care, whatever you are, if you work in the world of finance, take all the things that I'm talking about and doing and duplicate them. Duplicate's all there. It's on my website, financialpma.com. Run with it. Form financial PMAs all over the nation. I don't claim any ownership. I'm not trying to franchise. I'm trying to get capital markets back again and the glorious rebirth of America, capital markets, because it could happen. I certainly can't do it alone. That's not going to happen. I can encourage other people to understand it and do it, though. If you go there and you like it, I'd love to have you. It's a completely different type of an answer. The way I formed my PMA, because I think it's smart and easy and clear and transparent, is there's a set flat annual fee for membership, and everything else that happens. It'll charge for trading costs. There are no commissions or broker this or kickbacks. None of that. None of it happens, which means more money stays in your account to stay invested. You end up better off, all things being equal, because you've gotten rid of those fees that erode your performance. In the world of finance, anybody that's honest will tell you, and anybody that has any inkling of how money works, you can't control the returns, with a few exceptions. If you get some fixed rate, like a bond or something. But in the world of investing in companies, you can't control the return. You can control the fees that you pay. The financial PMA gets rid of those fees, so it drops it to zero. You can pay the membership from somewhere else. Just write a check out of your bank account or something. It's easier, more transparent. Copy that. Tell people that you know in the world of finance to go and check it out. At first, I'm sure they're going to balk because everybody in the world of finance loves having the fees and what they get paid hidden because they're less accountable. But ultimately, if they believe in capital markets and if they start to do some of their own research, I think they're going to arrive at the same conclusion. If they've got a whole bunch of clients that they work with on their finances, and their clients, typically they're getting a lot of research from their corporate. The corporate office says, here's a great annuity, and here's a great fixed indexed annuity, and here's a great mutual fund, and here's a great UIT. And if I can get more financial professionals to actually look at where the money is going, what it's funding, some of them out there have to be patriotic and care about our country. And the ones that start looking are going to flip out once they realize they've been duped. They were conned into overfunding a small number of companies over and over and over again under different names, different sounding investments. There's a related piece to that, and this is, again, in the category of this is an option to you, but more importantly, I want other people out there in the world of finance to duplicate this. Because I've been at this for over 20 years, I have a lot of connections, a lot of insight, and in my view, I can see clearly what needs to happen in order for us to turn this ship around. Big money managers like BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, it's going to take them years to reverse out of some of the positions that they overbought in. And that's my professional opinion. They overbought into this globalist narrative, this whole notion that some 30-ish companies were going to control everything. If America fights back and is successful, we're going to reopen capital markets, and a bunch of people who see that and invest in other companies that are not these, I think they stand to do well. We do have that example of there's a woman that came through the financial PMA that I've personally been reporting on because I actually helped her personally. On October 8th, 2024, we did a series of trades. She now owns a stock portfolio based upon our research, and she is north of 50% in her returns. At one point, it comes and goes. There's an ebb and a flow. She was a little north of 60% briefly. So some of them have not performed well. Some have performed really well. Overall, she has returned half of her money in 1 year. 50% return-ish is extraordinary. But I think I don't believe that that's an exception. I believe that's the norm, and hopefully continues, and hopefully represents the rebirth of capitalism and the rebirth of middle-class America and make America great again and America first and all sorts of things. By the way, that portfolio, it's not U.S. only. It is America first in that it's a portfolio of stocks that embrace Western values. So it has some international exposure. On that, I have done a whole separate program on national security and not investing in things that are harmful. Go back and watch the episode that I did with Justin Bernier from the National Security Index for an exposing highlight on what I'm talking about there. But that is what a lot more people should be doing and talking about, how we allow our money to get invested. Because if you go on social media and you watch, if you find access to real news, which is not that mainstream news, that's garbage, and figure out that there are things that are happening that you don't agree with, and I listed some earlier, don't fund it. Don't give your money via these portfolio managers to the bad guys. They're going to use it. They're going to use your money in bad ways to harm us. Don't allow it to happen. So I started to say that there is another avenue that I'm pursuing. I started the Financial PMA. That, again, is the website, financialpma.com. Share it around, get it to friends, duplicate it, copy what I'm doing. My area of expertise and the reason that I made it in finance and was recruited by Wall Street. I have a very particular skill set. I have a background in retirement plan administration. That means things like 401k plans. I've actually gone out and traveled the country training and coaching and educating treasurers, and have worked on states and all that, all the way up to what are called 457 plans. I've done 403B. That's like hospitals and colleges and universities, nonprofits. Anyway, in the realm of workplace retirement plans, that's an estimated $46 trillion. And that is an avenue that we also have to be talking about. We also have to be exploring ways of not allowing the shooting fish in a barrel mentality, the just sitting duck abuse of people in 401k plans. So I put all this together, and starting a while ago, or actually not a while ago, it's 2009. In 2009, hopefully you can follow me on this. Again, I am watching for comments. If any part of this is unclear, comment and ask me questions. I'll be happy to drill down further. But in 2009, I started something called feebased401k.com. I still own that. It just redirects to my company. And then after that, it was feebased403b.com, trying to convince companies that instead of putting the plan advisor fees on the back of workers, meaning siphoning money out of the 401k plan, there are some companies that choose to work directly with a plan advisor, a specialist, that the company foots the bill, which means that all that, and I've seen lots of examples of those fee disclosures. It means that figure whatever it is, $70 or $130 or whatever, it doesn't keep coming out of your paycheck or coming out of your deposit into your 401k plan. That fee drops to zero. So instead of the employees of the company, the people contributing to the 401k plan, paying I can't call it hidden, but it's sort of a little bit of a buried, out of sight, out of mind, this fee that keeps getting siphoned out of the 401k, disrupting future growth, some companies decide to work directly with a specialist, and they'll pay that fee directly. It's advantageous in particular to small companies because oftentimes that owner group they amount to the lion's share of the 401k plan. Hopefully you follow me on that. That's been my business model. It's what made my company and how I was able to launch in 2012, 3 years after starting that whole discussion, etc. I know it probably sounds alien. I've had lots of conversations about it, and people think that's strange, but it is perfectly legitimate. There's no rule, guideline, or law that dictates that it's the employees that have to foot the bill. In fact, it is possible for companies to pay all of the fees, any legal fees, any custodial fees, all of it. That's pretty rare, but as a starting point, there are some companies that get the commission, whatever you want to call it, out of the plan and off of the back of the retirement savers and 401k plans. My reason for bringing all that up is recently I've added conversation around adding non-woke investment alternatives to 401k plans. There it is. And 401k plans account for about 13 trillion out of the 46 trillion. So figure just looking only for a moment at $13 trillion and how left and woke leaning, how much funding can you do with $13 trillion? And how much badness can happen inside of 401k plans if the overwhelming majority of them end up investing American workers and all our hard-earned savings into too few companies. Well, that's happened. I've proved it. I've proved it out. I did the parade of woke sameness where I took 30 some of the top the most used mutual funds inside of 401k plans. I took that from Kiplinger, news source Kiplinger. They have a list of the top 100. I just started at number 1 and worked my way down the list. And you can watch it in a video presentation that looks just like this. So it doesn't matter what the fund name is. So many people have ended up in overwhelmingly the top of their portfolio, the top of their investments over and over and over again. The same darn companies. There is hope for that, by the way, because there are some lawsuits that are starting to win, like American Airlines Pilots Union. It's called breach of fiduciary trust. And I think there should be a lot more of those. I would, how do I want to put this? I have a hobby. I like puzzles. I build puzzles. I recently built the little model engine. It's a working, rotating, it's a 12-cylinder engine. I love that stuff. It's just me. I have kind of nerd brain. I would set all that aside and consider my new hobby presenting in courtrooms as a special witness against and talking about fiduciary breach inside of what are called ERISA plans. I would, to my heart's content, I would probably click my heels with joy, parading the country and lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, showing breach of fiduciary trust in these 401k plans that bought the woke and allowed their employees to go all into like an all Vanguard lineup, and Vanguard going overwhelmingly identical, overwhelmingly similar in a whole bunch of different sounding mutual funds. That whole system got bogged down and broken by that corporate equity index that I talked about earlier. It's starting to reverse. And for individuals, I'd love to see mass individual exodus from woke managers. Leave Wall Street. Stop paying, especially if you're paying some planner or broker that's then putting you in mutual funds and you're paying management fees on the mutual funds. And then embedded in the mutual funds are your trading costs, by the way. And then they're not giving you what you need, which is a well-built, diversified portfolio that you can see and trust and understand that it isn't woke. And if they're doing that at the detriment of the United States, harming us and the West, it's just a bad situation all the way around. So consider going into, and it can take everything that I talk about at UnWoke. You can DIY. They're great web-based trading tools. They're really, really inexpensive. I have some favorites, some that I get good feedback on. I'm not connected or affiliated with any of them. I'll give feedback, but just pick one that does cheap trades and just build a portfolio. If you don't want to do that, then there are several options. Go to a financial planner that you know and tell them this is what you expect. If they say no, or you get indication that they're woke, keep going. Find one that isn't. Call Matt and Drew. Matt and Drew from Inspire Advisors. They've been guests on the program several times. They are based in Columbus, Ohio. So if you care geographically, if you're in that area, or if you don't, it doesn't really matter. Most people work online anyway, phone calls. Matt and Drew at Inspire, they're an option. I arranged that. I actually called around and found people because I need to have somewhere to point people to tell them, go unwoke. Get the woke out of your portfolio. Stop funding this stuff. So I met Matt and Drew. We ended up inking a deal. If you end up liking them, that they're going to roll out the red carpet and try to win your trust. If they do, and you like the impact report that they're going to run for you for free, if you end up working with Matt and Drew, know that some of that comes back to keep episodes like this one going. And we'd be delighted. But there's no need for that. Just take everything we're talking about and duplicate it somewhere. So that takes care of individuals. On the institutional side, on the 401k side and things like it, consider what I've done. I rolled out a flat fee. So if you know somebody that's involved in the administration of a workplace retirement plan, that's a company out there, and you've got whatever the benefits director or human resources director, or sometimes it's the CFO, it doesn't matter. If you find those people, point them my way. I'd love to talk to them, make sure they're aware that there are good, easy ways of giving non-woke investment alternatives to the employees of that company. And I came out with just my cost. My cost, I'm offering to do that for a flat fee to the company of $5,000 per year. So I've done estimates. So what does 5,000 mean? I've done estimates, and according to the number of plans there are in the U.S., average cost is around $130,000 per year. I think it's probably because that skews toward the high end with really big plans. Figure 50,000. Let's round down to 50,000. If the employees of the company are paying $50,000 per year, money taken out of their plan that can't grow over time, $5,000 is like a nickel. It's insanely low. There are some companies out there that know that they will probably will enjoy a tax write-off for working with me on that level. Then when I work directly for the company and not taking money out of the plan, that frees me to do the things that I've trained for and done for decades, like find other fees, conflicts of interest, and perhaps most importantly to this conversation, add those non-woke investment alternatives. Add things like the ability to build your own stock portfolio within the 401k plan. It's called self-directed brokerage accounts. And convince some companies that that's worthwhile and walk them through how to do it. If I do that I'll do that for as many companies as I can at that price point. 5,000 that's half of what the minimum used to be to even talk to a company when I was on Wall Street. That's not going to be for everybody. A lot of plans, especially big companies out there, are uncomfortable veering away from one of the Wall Street big names, even though I came from that. That's what I did. And that's okay. That's fine. And some of them, they'll hear me talk about non-woke and funding capital markets and everything. And that for a lot of companies, I think that'll freak them out. I don't care. There are some patriotic companies out there, especially small, closely held companies, that when they look, and you can do it too, they're going to figure out that they're paying whatever it is, 30, 50, 70, 100,000 is all coming out of all the employees' accounts year after year after year after year. And the light bulb's going to go on. They're going to say, we can get a raise inside of our 401k plan, and all we have to do is work directly with a specialist. And we have no conflict of interest. We don't do anything else. We don't have any kickbacks. There's no revenue sharing, none of the things that typically exist in that world. There are no finder's fees, no 12B1 fees, no overrides, no commissions, no cross-selling, no bank accounts, no insurance products, nothing. Simple. And I leverage the contacts that I have, do a better job of addressing typical conflicts of interest, rooting them out. Oftentimes I've stripped out so many fees I've lost track of over a decade ago of all of the just horrible stuff that happens in that. It's like the Wild West of fees. But again, just like the financial PMA, I'm not going to do it all on my own. That is furthest thing from my imagination. I talk about this and do this live stream in the hopes that there are other people out there that either work in finance or know people that work in finance and have a cousin or brother-in-law or something If your sister is a stockbroker somewhere, I don't care. Get them into the conversation. Have them call me. I will take the time to walk them through the thought process, the logic. They can take bits and pieces, whatever they want, run with it. I claim no ownership. We just simply need to understand that the issues that we see, all of them that I'm talking about, that I see people posting on, have a follow the money element to them. When we follow the money, it's uncomfortable and it's unfortunate, but acknowledge it leads right back to us. Sure, there's that tax side. Yeah, a lot of people paid attention to Doge and what's happened through NGOs. Those are non-governmental organizations, and our tax money being funneled through NGOs and USAID and all that stuff. I actually, as a side note, I have a very good friend that works in that arena on the nonprofit and NGO side, and he's an incredible sleuth. And that's important, but that's around half the puzzle. And that's going to take some time to sort out. It'll take a long time and political will that I don't see on the horizon, actually, to unravel all that. But this stuff, what's ultimately your 401k gets invested in, and I'm hopeful that by now you agree with me that it's a globalist bubble. It's a bubble waiting to pop. This we could solve overnight. It's your money. You decide, wherever it is, your IRA account, your 401k, your brokerage account. If you have investment dollars somewhere, please, I'm asking you, pay attention to what ultimately is being funded. I'm going to read it one more time and then we're going to wrap up. What we fund today becomes the future the next generation inherits. What future do you want for the next generation? Because you're funding it right now, whether you know it or not. I'm Jonathan Broadbent. This has been another live stream. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope to see you back here next Wednesday. Bye, everyone.